Hi, it's Bill Sutton.
And Jason Sutton.
Welcome to another session of Sutton Impact Family Style. And we've got a variety of fun topics to talk about today. And one of the first things we're going to talk about is NFL free agency and
specifically
the Cleveland Browns and analytics and NBA type maneuvering of draft picks.
Where they just took Brock Osweiler's contract on with no intention of keeping him. So they took on $16 million of cap space for a second-round pick.
And that, to me, just seems mind-boggling. $16 million. And even if they flip him and get even a third or fourth-round pick,
it's hard to imagine you get much more than that for Brock Osweiler.
Yeah, and if you're going to if the Dallas Cowboys are forced to cut Tony Romo, you know that everybody knows that Brock Osweiler is not in the long-term plans of the Cleveland Browns. And to be able to trade him, there would have to be significant market interest that one team would be willing to trade for him rather than letting him sit there and somebody take him as a free agent, which that to me would be the play. And
even though the Browns have said that they will take on half of the money. So they'll continue to pay. Like, if you trade for him from the Browns will pay 8 of the 16 that he's owed.
That's pretty incredible. Never seen that maneuver before. We'll have to see how it plays out. But let's on a related topic, the Browns have seemed to really be all in on player analytics for drafting and evaluating talent.
And they have, I forget what it is, they have 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 2 thirds this year, a first, 3 seconds, and 2 thirds next year.
Yeah.
And that's not including their 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. So they have an absolute ton of picks.
They do have a ton of picks, but the Browns have a reputation of not making great picks.
No, Justin Gilbert, just go down the list, Johnny Manziel.
Any quarterback in the last 20 years.
Even though they have Brock Osweiler on their team, they actually have no quarterbacks, so they just cut Robert Griffin. So I guess you got Cody Kessler, their 3rd or 4th round pick, who didn't look very good last year. And again, you can't win in the NFL without a quarterback.
So, I've been all in on analytics for a while, but now I'm having to reassess my position. So I'll start with Trump, and there were some analytics there that weren't very predictive. I'm looking at some of these draft picks that just haven't worked out. And I'm looking at baseball with Andrew McCutchen specifically mentioning that while analytics show that he was a poor defensive outfielder, it was really the strategy of how the Pirates employed their analytics to play him in shallow, and he would get burned on balls and look bad, and his defensive stats would be down because of the way the analytics were interpreted. And so I'm wondering how you measure everything. You can't measure everything in analytics. You can't measure heart. You can't measure desire. You can't measure passion.
You can't measure team chemistry. Just because one guy just...
Sure, you can't measure how it's going to be together. So while I think there's a lot of great things that can be learned through analytics, and analytics is a tool, I'm not so sure that analytics is the ultimate decision maker. I think it's a tool, but I think the Browns are trying to use it as an ultimate decision maker, and I'm just not sure how that's going to play out.
I think some of that might be just desperation of just years of just trying and failing. And I think at this point they're like, we have to embrace something completely new. But as you said, I think you look at the way analytics over the years have sort of changed. In the beginning of analytics, typically the best player, WAR or whatever stat it was, would be somebody that played like 4 games a year and came in and had a couple of good games. Or there would be the Mike Dunleavy, who would just be ahead of LeBron in analytics based on, minutes played and his points per game based on his minutes played, which would just be ridiculous. And now they're slowly tweaking them. Mm-hmm. But it seems like, I question just the overall. I know Charles Barkley obviously hates analytics in general, but again, I don't know if Charles Barkley understands analytics. No, it seems like they should be a factor.
Yeah,
but like you said, it seems like the Browns are just all in, and they're going to go numbers.
But I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody on the Browns staff, but I'm not so sure that you can convince me as a football fan that taking people from a baseball organization that have a great understanding of analytics and letting them apply those analytics to football is a good, sound business decision.
And where analytics have been most successful in baseball, baseball is also a very unique team sport. I think it's easier to tell somebody's individual stats. It's more of an individual team sport than football or baseball. Like football, you need...
And there's less interaction.
Right. You need that 11-man unit working like some sort of amoeba, where they're all together, all working as one cohesive unit. Whereas baseball, your left fielder and your center fielder, it's nice that they have some chemistry, but I mean, they can sort of do their own thing. Each pitcher sort of does his own thing. You don't really need to worry about some of the team chemistry things with baseball. I mean, I think you do, but not to the same extent as you do with football and basketball.
But I have a feeling the Browns are going to be a topic on our show for the next 6 months.
Potentially, for certain.
Yeah, as we see how it plays out. Because I know we'll be talking about during the draft, and I know there'll be some real interesting considerations. We'll still have to see what they do with this Osweiler pick.
I have a friend, Clark, who's a huge Browns fan. And while he has admitted they've been completely inept for over a decade now, he is incredibly excited that they have so many picks. Because it at least makes watching the draft fun.
Sure.
Because you never know what they can do. They have enough ammunition. They can move up. They can move down. They have the chance to get any player. And I think when you're that bad, I'm sure that's something that's kind of just amazing and awesome. It makes the draft fun at the very least.
It does. And you know what? As bad as Cleveland's been, to be fair, the Redskins are giving them a run for their money.
Mm-hmm.
The Redskins have made some unbelievably poor decisions.
Well, they're the first team ever to allow 2,000-yard receivers to walk in the same season. Their franchise quarterback refuses to negotiate a long-term deal.
And they fired their general manager, a year and a half, 2 years into his term?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people question whether he should have been general manager in the first place.
Which is a very good question, based on his history, and clearly his history sort of played out in a bad way. You never want to judge anybody for their...
They're off the field.
Off the field didn't necessarily, but, I mean, it should have been a warning sign. It was a warning sign, and they ignored it, and now they're back to square one. And they still have that stupid name.
Agreed. So let's talk about
another analytical argument. We can go to that, actually. We can go from analytics to analytics with our MVP debate.
Yes.
I've actually listened to a lot of former players, Gary Payton, Theo Ratliff, a number of current players as well, and they seem to feel that what Russell Westbrook is doing is just never been seen before. Yep. That he is lifting that team of Oladipo and Ernest Cantor and just a collection of, I know they just made a trade for the Bulls and they brought in a couple of other guys, but there's not a lot of offensive firepower on that team.
No, it's not. It's not.
And when he is on the floor, they're 1.2 points better possession than anybody else, and when he's off, it's like a drop. It's a double-digit drop. So it's one of those, like, I know, people say he's a ball hog and he's a selfish player, but it seems like there may not be a choice.
Yeah, if you're getting double-digit assists every game, I can't, you might, can't call me a ball hog. I might control the ball more than you'd like me to control it, but I don't think you're a ball hog if you're getting double-digit assists. To me, Carmelo Anthony's a ball hog.
Right.
Because the ball stops when it gets in his hands. When it gets in Russell Westbrook's hands, it doesn't necessarily stop. There's an assist or there's something going on. But I'm 100% in the Westbrook camp. Unfortunately, I was too young and really didn't follow basketball in the early 60s when Oscar Robertson, set the record, and I didn't see Wilt. I saw Wilt play, and to be honest with you, I was unaware that Wilt had 31 triple-doubles streak.
No, definitely not.
Had no idea about that. But I definitely would vote for Russell Westbrook as the MVP because that team, after having lost Durant, for that team to be where it is with the talent that it has is pretty incredible. And if you took Russell Westbrook off that team's a lottery team.
A high lottery team.
Yeah.
But back to the analytics. The analytic people love James Harden, which is not surprising because that's an analytic team, the Houston Rockets, who probably with Daryl Morey as the GM have sort of embraced analytics maybe more than any team in the NBA.
Well, Daryl Morey's one of the people that really led to the mass adoption of analytics. With the Sloan Conference up at MIT. Daryl Morey was a real prime mover in this. And he got his general manager job based upon his understanding of analytics. Yeah.
And I think analytics, like numbers, again, if you look at both the Rockets and the Warriors, when you have, maybe two of the 5 best shooters of all time and you're the Warriors, it makes a lot of sense to shoot a lot of threes.
It does.
And when you're the Rockets, you have Harden, Gordon, who's the big guy I always forget? He played for the Magic. Kyle Anderson, or Anderson.
Yeah.
Ryan Anderson. again, you have guys that are designated to shoot threes. So then all of a sudden that all the math works and it looks like you're successful and it backs up the analytics. But if you take a team like the Bulls, who don't have 3-point shooters, having them all of a sudden shoot threes, they look terrible, and all of a sudden the analytic numbers don't work. It doesn't make sense to shoot more threes than twos.
No, you
I know they're worth more points. And
right.
If you shoot a slightly less percent at 3 than you do at 2, then the numbers make it seem like you should just continue to shoot threes.
And then it plays into the Houston thing plays into the Mike D'Antoni style play.
Right.
I mean, he's always done that, and that's what he's done. He's very, very successful as long as he's had the people to run the system. But I just think, to me, it's not even close. I have to go Westbrook all in. I'm all in on Westbrook for MVP.
And obviously, LeBron is LeBron, and he probably will never get what is due every single year, sort of in the same way Jordan, where they're bored of voting for him. But he's having a pretty tremendous season, again.
Of course, yeah.
And then obviously, a mild shout out to Kawhi Leonard down in San Antonio, who is just killing it this year.
He would be my second. I would vote for him over Harden.
Because his defense just takes him to another level.
He's a multi-dimensional player. He can do a lot of things.
And he gets knocked for his analytics of his rebounding numbers for some strange reason. And again, it's what I feel like with numbers, you can throw numbers up there, and you can find truths in those numbers, but you can look at those same numbers and find fallacies. And it just depends on which numbers you want to focus on for your case. It's like, well, these numbers bear out, but it's like, for the 3-point numbers, for instance. But I'm looking at the Warriors, where I have two of probably a top 10 at the very least shooters of all time in NBA history between Clay and Steph.
Oh, for sure.
And then I've got a big in Draymond Green that can shoot threes. I got guys off the bench that can shoot threes. Up until a few weeks ago, I had Kevin Durant, a 7-footer who can shoot threes.
Yeah.
So, it's very easy to say, shoot threes, shoot threes, shoot threes. Look what the numbers bear out.
If you have the talent.
It seems like a lot of analytics work when you have the talent to back it up.
That's a good point. Well, let's switch gears and talk about the Bleacher Report article you sent me.
Okay. The article was basically titled... What was the title of the article? Oh, we get it correct. It was basically discussing being a political activist in a free agency market. And it specifically was talking a lot about, obviously, Colin Kaepernick, who has come out now and said that he will stand for the national anthem next year. But at the same time, again, I will point out that the author said that there were anonymous GMs, but there were almost a third of the league's GMs said that they would not even remotely bring in the possibility of bringing Kaepernick in.
No. The exact title of the article you sent me is Fear and Free Agency in the Era of Political Activism on Bleacher Report. And I thought it was a very fair story.
It's a very complicated issue because on the one hand, we ask our athletes and our famous people in this country, we ask them, when you have a platform and you see something, you need to speak out because you have a voice and a platform that the average person doesn't have.
Let's talk about that, Jason. You said see something. A lot of the athletes have spoken out, but they haven't been on national television.
True.
And whereas Kaepernick, you saw him not stand.
Right.
And we made a real big deal out of it, and we started covering the national anthem on NFL games, which we'd never done before. Usually you cut to the game and the game's kicking off. You don't see the national anthem. So Kaepernick made that whole thing a story, but it was visual. It wasn't somebody being on a panel somewhere talking about their views, which happens all the time.
It's true.
But this particular thing, it was highly visible, and the media ran with it, and the media made it a huge story.
And again, like you said, all of a sudden it was like, well, who's going to stand, who's going to sit?
Mm-hmm. And that's what it became.
And
unfortunately, and I talked about this in my class at USF, his message never got out because it got caught into the standing for the national anthem. I mean, what he said, what he was protesting against was police brutality and discrimination and things like that, but that never got out because it kept focusing on the national anthem. So in some ways, it was unfortunate that he picked the wrong platform because the platform dwarfed the message.
It's true. But it is ironic that he picked a platform where he was a peaceful protester.
Yeah.
And he was doing everything within his rights. Technically, that the national anthem is stood for. The fighting is for the right for people to do what he did. Mm-hmm. But like you said, the second he did that, it just became, you hate this country, you hate the troops. And the discussion was over. It was like it's either you stand for the national anthem and you love America, but if you kneel, you hate America.
And, you know, I go back to Tommy Smith in 1968 in Mexico City Olympics, and they were vilified. And they'd won gold medals. They'd won medals. And were protesting at after that. And I remember Cassius Clay, a.k.a. Muhammad Ali, and I remember that. But I also remember Ali being the only person I've ever seen that totally, he didn't really reinvent himself. Everyone else reinvented him as they changed their thoughts and philosophies and became supportive of Ali's views. And it's interesting that he became larger than life as a result of his protests. And I just don't see that today with any of the athletes we have.
No, and I think, I mean, not to take anything away from what he did, which was phenomenal, but he was in an individual sport where he was, as long as he was the champ and he was the best fighter, he was going to continue to get work. And as the article pointed out, there's guys now that if they choose to speak out in any sort of way, whether it's completely controversial, even mildly controversial, there are owners that don't want to touch them. Mm-hmm. And it's purely business. And again, these are the same owners that hire Greg Hardy. Right. That employ people that have been, domestic violence issues. And again, not to pigeonhole somebody and say that once you've done something, you're labeled that forever.
Right.
But they have continued to hire multiple criminal offense people over the years as long as they produce. Mm-hmm. But now that you have people that are speaking out, or at least attempting to do something with their platform, they don't want to touch them.
No.
And again, as not an owner, clearly.
Right.
But as if you own a business, it's clearly your right to decide, the voice of your business. Like you can't if you're a teacher, you can't be posting bikini pics on your Facebook page. Now, as an American, you can do that all you want.
Right.
But as a school, I can decide, you know what, that's not the image I want for my teachers. I'm not going to hire you. Now, whether that's right, but that's their right as a business. As an owner of the NFL team, that they don't want that, quote unquote distraction, which again, the article also mentioned coaches. Mm-hmm. And it said, and it basically was pointing out that coaches may not care one way or the other, or even if they agree with the player, it's about that player disrupting their system.
Right.
That he'll be a distraction. That when they want the media to focus on this, or not focus on anything at all, other than the game, and they can give their curt answers, Belichick style, and not really say anything, they don't want some other player. They don't want a player on their team that's going to cause any sort of distraction to anybody else. Whether they would or would not, that's really up to, I guess, the other players to decide. But it seemed like it almost became more of a situation. I see both sides. Like, I do want our athletes and our famous people that, when we had, if there's something in this country that they believe needs attention, they are in a better position than me or a lot of people to actually say something about it, to get behind it.
Mm-hmm. They've got a podium.
They've got a podium. And we always say we want them to use that podium. But now we're asking them to maybe forego millions of dollars in order to pursue that podium.
Sure.
And it's easy for me to sit back and be like, yeah, you should do that. That's great, but it's not my sacrifice.
So do we think Colin Kaepernick is going to be on an NFL roster in September?
It's hard to imagine, despite how he's looked the last 2 years, that a quarterback with his potential, his age, who's been to a Super Bowl, would not find so we're talking about Brock Osweiler and Tom Savage and Cody Kessler and some of these guys that are going to be starting quarterbacks in the NFL this year. The fact that people are maybe desperate for Tony Romo, who's 37 and hasn't really played a game in 3 years because he keeps breaking from collarbones. It's hard to imagine somebody wouldn't look there and say he's worth, And I think it's complicated by the fact that if he was Colin Kaepernick from 2 years ago, mm-hmm. I don't think there's any question. I think he tells the owner, I'll stand. Maybe they make some sort of press conference talk, and he's on a roster. But the Colin Kaepernick we saw last year looked skinny. Mm-hmm. Like he didn't look like the athlete. He changed his diet. He went from being one of the most diesel-ripped quarterbacks in the NFL that could handle the rigors of an NFL season to somebody that didn't look the same.
All right, I'm going to give you 3 quarterbacks' names, and you rank them in order of who you think is going to be on an NFL roster in September.
Okay.
So who's most likely, second most likely, third most likely.
All right,
here's your choices. Brock Osweiler, Colin Kaepernick, or G3, Jay Cutler.
Well, I think Cutler and Osweiler are no-brainers. I think Cutler has proven that, at the very least, he can get you to 8-8
Okay.
Which is terrible. But he's still got the arm, and I think he's still at that age where there's going to be some his issues that he supposedly has bad body language and his teammates don't like him. But I think somebody's going to bring him in.
Okay.
I think Osweiler's a young guy. He was a first-round pick. He played well for Denver when he came in for Manning. Like, he helped them stay afloat when they ended up going to the Super Bowl. He kind of got a raw deal. He played terrible for Houston. There's no...
Okay.
I mean, I watched him play. I don't know how you can... But I just think there's no question he'll be on the team.
Okay.
And the other two, I guess I feel like Kaepernick over RG3. I think RG3 is just done.
Do you think he'll go with Vince Young to the Canadian League?
I think he might have to. I don't know how articulate it is as far as being an announcer, but I think that was his last shot. I mean, even the Browns were like, we can't... I mean, the Browns, who just traded for Osweiler, of all people, and want to get rid of him again, cut him.
Now, I'm going to point something out, Jason. So we're 20 minutes into our show, and we probably spent 17 minutes talking about NFL-related issues. So the NFL has gotten what it wants. We're sitting here in March Madness talking about the NFL.
It's very true.
So the NFL is really achieving its goal of being a 12-month league, even though they don't play for 6 months. Pretty incredible. Let's talk about March Madness. I don't see the big upset so far. Teams, mid-majors, not advancing that are supposed to advance, and I see, we're talking about 10 teams from the ACC. We're talking about a lot of the same olds. So I wonder how that's going to bode for March Madness this year.
I know. As I've been looking, I'm interested to see what Lorenzo Ball. I know UCLA is a pretty big favorite team, but
they lost last night.
Yep. But I do want to see him in the tournament to see if he can be, he can have a Carmelo-like year where he just puts that team on his back and takes them to the Final Four.
I mean, it's a leading offensive team in college basketball.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, again, I've just been searching for stories.
Mm-hmm.
And, you got Gonzaga, I think. And, again, that's a little bit personal because I've always had a connection to Gonzaga.
Yeah.
And Lorenzo Ball. But I don't see, whether it's the Western Michigan or the Eastern. I mean, I don't know who the Florida Gulf Coast. Hopefully those stories will come up in that first weekend. But going into the tournament, like you said, it looks like a very chalk year.
It does, and I've been hoping for some. The other night I watched Milwaukee, and I think Milwaukee was 8-24, and they were in the finals.
And they're in the finals, yeah.
And I was rooting for them just to be disruptive, because that would have knocked somebody else out. So I was hoping that they were there. Vanderbilt just beat Florida for the third time.
Mm-hmm.
Vanderbilt's an interesting team. I mean, who knows what they do? They can beat Florida, so we'll see where they are. But I've also gotten a lot of offers this year that I've never gotten before for discount for first-round games at the NCAA. No fees, discounts, and so I'm interested to see what attendance is. Attendance has been dropping, and for obvious reasons. If you don't, I watched Notre Dame last night, and Notre Dame has juniors and seniors. And you have very few teams that have juniors and seniors. Vanderbilt, probably another team with juniors and seniors. But you don't have that continuity of being able to follow the team for 3 or 4 years and really like everybody on the team.
Right.
Like Alonzo Ball's going to be gone next year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're a UCLA fan, you don't have Alonzo Ball next year. So,
and Marcus Fultz is going to be the second or third pick in the draft. He's already declared, and his team's not making the tournament.
Yeah. So, it's crazy. I mean, it's really... The one in Denver has really hurt college basketball, and it's starting to have an impact on March Madness.
And it'll be interesting to see once the NBA really goes all in the NBA DL, if they can pay people a competitive salary for 2 years. Like, how many people will just jump? Because I think going over to China and playing like
they're not going to do
Emmanuel Mudiay did, I think that takes a different sort of kid to go, 18-year-old kid to jump across and go to Europe for a year.
Yeah, and remember, you're out of sight, out of mind.
You're out of sight, you're out of mind, you're in another country. It's, and the world is what it is today, so it's kind of scary. But I think if I'm, a junior or senior, if I'm a senior in high school and it's a one and done at, some school, or I can go play in the NBA DL, get paid, I'd be really tempted just to jump right there.
So we're gonna have a D League team 30 minutes from us in Lakeland, the Magic's D League team. So we'll go over and check out some D League. Maybe we'll do a D League story this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that this tournament just surprises and ends up being, March Madness always obviously has their magic moments that they end up showing us every year, and hopefully there'll be some of those. But like I said, sitting here right now, like after Gonzaga lost, I know it's just one loss, but they don't look like a Cinderella team to me at this point. I mean, I've watched them a few times this year.
No, they're not a Cinderella team.
They're not. I don't see them making a run to the Final Four. And
even if they did, I mean, they're ranked in the top 5. They're not a Cinderella team. They're not. They're interesting. All right, let's switch gears and go to our food debate.
All right.
So, introduce our food debate, Jason.
Are we going fast food?
Yeah, let's go talk about it.
So the internet's sort of blown up. I know the first place I saw it was The Ringer made their top 50 fast foods, and then everybody sort of went crazy and started posting their own thoughts on it. Our initial argument we had earlier today, or not argument, but just debate, because we don't really argue. We just talk. It's part of our thing.
No yelling.
No yelling. But it was that what constitutes fast food? Because certainly a BurgerFi, a Shake Shack, you go in, there's no drive-through, you order your food, you sit down, they make your food and they bring it to you. Mm-hmm. It's not a traditional sit down with a menu restaurant, but it's not exactly fast food. So we were thinking fast food. For me, my argument was that in order to be a fast food restaurant, you needed a drive-through. And you were saying that it's food that's already, like, it's not like I want a burger with this. Now, not that you can't get substitutions, but you go to McDonald's, it's a quarter pounder with cheese, it's a quarter pounder with cheese.
Yeah.
It's just, you sort of, go Chick-fil-A sandwich, they put it in the bag.
And we talked about some of our local places here, like Four Rivers, where it's fast, it's efficient, the food's already prepared, but I wouldn't call it fast food. I mean, the food took 12 hours to cook.
Right. And again, there's no drive-through. You have to call it, if you can call ahead and get takeout, but it's not. So as much as if I was going to say my favorite fast food burger, I would put Shake Shack on the list if we were including it. But I think by our standards, fast food and Shake Shack aren't exactly the same. No. And we're kind of on the fence on Culver's. Because I don't know if you order your food at Culver's, but you still go through drive-thru and get it fairly quickly. Right. But it still is cooked to order. It's cooked to order, and you drive and you sit in your car, and then within a few minutes to even maybe longer than that, somebody comes out with your bag and hands it to you. So it's, it is what it is. So having said that, let's talk about Pittsburgh food. So my dining, I'll start with my dining. My dining in Pittsburgh is a restaurant called Alla Familia. It's on Warrington Avenue in a not-so-great area of Pittsburgh, but being gentrified and coming back. It's an amazing Italian restaurant, very good food, good seafood, not overly priced, must have reservations to go, sometimes reservations 2-3 weeks out. So Alla Familia on Warrington Avenue is my go-to restaurant in Pittsburgh. Jason, what's your go-to pizza in Pittsburgh? It's my go-to pizza, if I could have any pizza in the world, and that's Fiore's Pizza. Where is that located? Because Fiore's Pizza's on Capitol Avenue in Brookline/Dormont, right off West Liberty Avenue. It is just, for me, it's the best pizza ever. And again, I've had this experience a couple times now, where we lived there when we were little. We got Fiore's whenever I could get it. Loved it. And then it had been a few years since I had it. And I was wondering, did the legend become bigger than the actual reality of the pizza? So I had a film in a festival in Erie, so I flew into Pittsburgh, got my rental car, drove right to Fiore's, completely loved the hype. It was everything I imagined it would be. And then we went back up for your dinner at Robert Morris College. And not only did we go, for us, we brought somebody that had never been to Fiore's before. And every time we bring somebody to Fiore's, they're wowed. They think it's off the charts. Just crust, sauce, cheese, just everything is just perfect. And then, obviously, if we're talking about Pittsburgh food, I got to talk about Permane Brothers. The legend is larger than the quality, I think. I think so as well. But what makes Permane Brothers is food with an attitude. You ask for something, they might say no. But it's a sandwich with French fries, coleslaw, and whatever meat you want on 2 slices of Italian bread. Very unique sandwich. You'll always see it when they're televising a game from Pittsburgh. You'll always see a cut. They have it at the sporting events. You always see Permane Brothers featured. It's good. It's a unique Pittsburgh experience. And really, it's probably led to the fact that whenever you say you want something Pittsburgh style, it now means you want French fries on it. Yeah. So you can get a Caesar salad Pittsburgh style, which is a Caesar salad with French fries. So don't be afraid to ask for something Pittsburgh style. And then an honorable mention for you would be the place that I first tried cold cheese on a pizza. Beato's. Very interesting. It's square pizza. You buy it by the cut, buy a tray pizza. It's very crispy, very thin. But the sauce is on, no cheese is baked on it, and the cheese is added at the end. All the toppings, in fact.
None of the toppings are cooked on the pizza. The pepperoni's cold, the cheese is cold, but it's a very, very unique and interesting pizza, and one that I happen to love. And a perfect weekend for me is a day at Fiore's and a day at Bito's, and a dinner in Alla Familia.
Straight Italian, pretty much Italian right there.
Pretty much with the, yep. You're Pittsburgh, we're pretty much going Italian. So, we'll sign off.
Remember, support us on Patreon. Hit us up on social media. We'll be launching very, very soon. We're just waiting on our logo, which is in the works as we speak. And if you want to keep hearing more content, please support us. We'll send you links to Patreon soon.
Appreciate your support. Thank you.